Welcome everyone to the next episode of Impactables with Rishav. Today we have Mr. Prasanna from Five Money. Welcome Prasanna to the episode.
Really glad to be here, Rishav. Thanks for extending an invite, and it's a delight to be here.
Great. So for the very first thing we'll start with is like recently you posted something that Fi is live on MCP server.
Yes.
And can you please elaborate something like what is that MCP server and how it Fintech enables all those things?
Sure. I'll go back in history with regards to what we are trying to build at Fi and how the whole thing started and everything, right? So at Fi, we are a modern money management app for all things money. We help our users primarily understand their finances in depth, and we also help them build the right savings habits, help them save and invest and grow their money, as well as for when there is a need arises, help them with credit and lending products, right? So it's our mission, to put it in simpler terms, is to help users maximize their financial potential. So that's what we started with, and we actually we started as a startup back in 2019, and we launched our product in late 2020, early 2021 time frame, right? So at that time when we launched, we were practically the first in the country to have fully digital full KYC account opening in a matter of minutes, right? So we started with the neobanking side of the overall story that we are building, and even then when we launched, we had a feature called Ask Fi, where what you could do was you could connect. This was post when the account aggregator ecosystem went live. We were an early adopter there. So what you could do at that time was, whether it is your Fi account or all your other accounts, you could connect all of them on the Fi app. And then you could ask questions like, how much did I spend on Amazon last month, right?
Okay.
And you would literally get the answer
But I need
in
to
a matter of seconds.
log in my Amazon account also, or like?
Not really. So the tech behind the scenes there was, we have all your financial information in terms of transaction and stuff, whether it is in your Fi savings account or in your other accounts, right? So what we did was, this was, like I said, pre-Gen AI, honestly, and we used your classic ML and DS techniques to do intent and entity identification.
But in case if I pay via credit card,
yes,
that particular might not come to the bank, and how do you used to fetch that how much I spend on Amazon?
So that one is a function of the account aggregator ecosystem growing over time and becoming comprehensive. But you are right in the sense that the gap we would have is the transactions that we don't get to see, whether it is through your Fi account or the account aggregator, those would still be blind spots for us. But for all your transactions, and again this correlates with UPI becoming literally the dominant payment mode out there and whatnot, right? So what the innovation we did was apply slightly sophisticated ML and DS techniques to do everything from intent classification, entity identification and all that, and not to mention we combined it with some modern tech choices in terms of, we use Apache Pinot and a few other modern techniques to do all that instant aggregation and give you all of what you needed, any sorts of those slice and dice questions, right? So this was something we had pre-Gen AI, like I said, right? And obviously over time we've also built out the product suite. We've launched more on the investment sides. We now have even fractional investments in international US stocks and stuff, right? So we built out the story. And the other thing that's happened organically over time is the entire Gen AI wave, right? And obviously, I mean, we don't need to talk about Gen AI, that might take hours on its own. But we've always had this view that, hey, how do we use the modern techniques, data science, ML, to really help our users build the right habits, both in terms of understanding what their spending habits are, where are they spending their money, and how can they save more, invest better. And through the theme, when the entire Gen AI landscape started becoming more mainstream, we re-looked at what we had built, like I said, what we called as Ask Fi, and we looked at, hey, how do I further leverage Gen AI to take it to the next level, right? And that is where what's called MCP, right? MCP is basically your model context protocol, and what it basically stands for is, you have the standard models, the modern, the OpenAI models or the Gemini models from Google or others, right? And for a lot of the models, the insights you get, or when you're asking a question to the model, the context, as it's called, that you provide to support your question plays a critical role in the quality and the depth of the insights you might get in terms of the responses from the model. Correct. And Model Context Protocol, or MCP, is a standardized way where you could gather data from multiple sources and then provide it to the models to enrich the conversation. So for us, to summarize, it was a continuation of the helping our users understand their finances and demystify their finances track. And we really, in many ways, we took what we had built as part of the AskFi stack we had, and we kind of just took it to the next level by saying, you know what, I'm going to help our users aggregate all their info, because the other thing that we did over the years was not only did account aggregator ecosystem become richer and more comprehensive in terms of data sources, we had also built an in-house net worth tracking feature where it's not just your bank accounts from account aggregator or the 5 federal savings account, but it also includes, we also have mutual funds as a product now, right? So what that meant was we have your data from, and we also built a net worth functionality.
Oh, just like
so everything from EPFO,
EP,
you can connect your EPF as a data source, and you could also connect obviously via MF Central or your direct investments that you have on the FI MF platform, right? So it's just a lot more of a comprehensive view on your entire financial picture, right? And now what we do is we gather all the data, and we also do a lot of pre-processing and enrichment of the data, because think about it, right? I mean, we all do so many transactions on UPI and all other mechanisms nowadays, right? So it's not that straightforward, or it's not that useful if I just took all your raw transaction information and feed it to the model. So what we do is a lot of enrichment of the transaction, because the particulars or the details you get is not always complete. It's broken, it may have sometimes errors or incomplete text, right? So we do all that enrichment as well, and in the end what you have is a really nice, comprehensive, tailored for AI consumption context that we build. And this feature, it's called Talk to AI as well, where you can literally fetch your financial summary as a file, and then you can use your favorite model out there to start getting insights and ask questions, whatever it be, right? And a couple of fun ways where we encouraged our users to try it out, and it really did become a little popular, was what's called roast and toast, right? So you give your financial summary via the MCP server or via the Talk to AI feature to, say, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then you can ask it to roast your investments or roast your portfolio, right? And that's just one fun way to get people hooked into it. It's there. But we are continuing to build, right? So the MCP, think of the MCP as for those folks who are a little more technically savvy and more familiar with the technical tools in terms of Cursor, Claude, and all the other agentic platforms. They can use the MCP server, which is a protocol-driven way to fetch the same data. But we have, like I said, we have simplified it for users to even fetch it as a standard, like an enriched file, and provide it as a context. And on that entire track, the other thing which we literally made live just last week was what we also call Magic Lens, because again, these are all modern, what I would call as a slightly experienced person, Gen Z oriented features, right? The new one is called Magic Lens. So there, what we basically do is you can take a picture of any item, right? This is where folks have things beyond what's covered in your transactions or your financial picture. And the Magic Lens, again, it's GenAI powered. It will come up with an estimate in terms of worth of whatever it is that you are capturing an image for. And again, it becomes easy for you to integrate into your net worth and ask questions of it and whatnot, right? But yeah, we're really investing in how do we leverage GenAI for the larger mission, which still remains. How do we help our users build the right habits when it comes to savings and developing the right habits? And the key ingredient there is helping folks understand really what's happening with their finances, what's happening with their money. Because a common question that everyone out there has on their mind is, hey, how do I build for the future? How do I build the corpus? And FIRE is a big thing nowadays, right? Where how do I retire early and stuff, right? So the questions are literally out there on everyone's minds. But again, the path in terms of how do you get there and how do you get there with a viable path still remains the hard thing to crack for everyone, if you ask me.
Got it. So you started your career as an engineer working in many companies. You worked at PayPal, Netflix, Flipkart also, right?
Yes.
Then suddenly you jumped to Fintech and become a founding member.
Right.
How was the shift for you as an individual?
Sure. Like for me, I've had what you might call a fairly linear progression as a career, right? Where I did, after bachelor's in India, I went to do master's in the US at University of Cincinnati. And then from there, internship to tech job is how I started, right? And a lot of my work was especially in search, right? A lot of the back end when it comes to search, web search, movie search and whatnot is how a lot of my initial career was. And through the way, a few things that I learned was, especially if I talk about my stint at Netflix, which remains a big influence on what I am today and the way I think and the way I operate and whatnot, right? So I joined Netflix when it was a DVD by mail service running out of data centers. Okay. So I really got lucky with the timing in the sense that I was there from day one when we did the whole migration to cloud, launch of streaming only and whatnot, right? And through that entire journey, and maybe just a point out there, Netflix is a one-of-a-kind company in terms of how they operate. For those that might be interested, right, or those that are not familiar with it, I would encourage folks to go look up Netflix's history in terms of their culture. And they had a slide deck around, I think it was 100-odd slide deck, and now they have what's called a culture essay. It really is a really great read, and the thing that I'll highlight is what you read is practically close to 100% what you see on the ground. In the sense they they run things as a professional org. Think of it as, if I were to give a desi example, right? Think about how an IPL team might be run, right? Where it's all about the objectives, and what they really emphasize is, one of the things they talk about is freedom and responsibility, and they really make it true, right? And for me, through that entire journey, and obviously then I went to PayPal and learned a ton of things. So PayPal was the first place where I did something other than search, but it was still leveraging search, right? Where the context was building an ad network and building an ad network business, where search and ads are literally parallels of each other in terms of a lot of the tech stack and a lot of the underlying problem statements. But through this entire journey, where all of this experience was primarily in the Bay Area, I slowly and steadily learned the value of not just tech for the sake of tech, but also what does it take to be part of a successful team, and realize the value of the people around you, basically the people you work with, and the culture in many ways, right? So it went from, the big shift was, say, when I was younger, I might have thought you want to work only on the toughest and the latest and the greatest technical problems, to slowly and steadily understanding it's not just the problem that you're working on. If anything, that's secondary. The primary is who are you working with, and what's the approach and the day-to-day of how you make decisions and how you work with each other. So that was a learning that happened organically. For me, I had always wanted to move back. Nothing special, because this is home, this is where I was born and brought up, and I had always wanted to come back.
Which year you came back to India?
2015. In fact, I think we're literally maybe a couple of days away from me hitting 10-year, a decade of having come back, right? So there, I would say 2015 was as good a time as any to move back, and I was lucky to have options and ended up joining Flipkart. So that was a time when Flipkart went out of its way to try and build a world-class team, and they attracted a lot of folks. I mean, forget for me, right? They attracted a lot of folks, even foreigners or Europeans, Americans, and then the common theme there was, when I connected with a bunch of them during my early days, very honestly, a lot of people looked at Flipkart as the next best or the biggest startup opportunity out there, right? And for me, it was a no-brainer, because I had anyway wanted to move back, and I had a really wonderful time at Flipkart, in the sense I would easily put it above average even by Bay Area standards, right? It was not because a lot of people used to ask me, hey, how was it? What did you do? How did you adjust? Very honestly, I didn't have to do a lot of adjustment, and all credit to the org, and especially the culture that the founders established and built there. And for me, on the work side, it was hardly any adjusting to do. It was fairly meritocratic. Yes, there is always a little bit of the Indianness, because it's still an Indian company, but work-wise, I was able to get into it, get integrated, adapted easily, and then start adding value as well. And even at Flipkart, it was again a continuation of search, recommendations, a lot of the work that I had done through my career, right? And one of the things that happened towards the last couple of years of my stay in the Bay Area was, a lot of my first degree friends and whatnot, they all started doing, they started their own startups, right? Because Bay Area is literally the place when it comes to startups and the whole startup ecosystem. And for me, being on H1B with dependents and stuff, and also the view that I'd always had in terms of moving back, meant it was not easy to take that plunge and make a commit, right? Because I had learned by then that startups are really, really hard, and it's not a 2-year, 3-year thing. If anything, and that too you're joining as an early member or whatnot, you have to commit to it. So I was hesitant, but I had seen the options out there, and it was always on the back of my mind that, you know what, in India, at least, I mean, you have to prepare for all scenarios, right? Worst case scenario, you're not an illegal alien, and I mean, that threat is always scary when you're abroad, for example, right? So that seed was always there in my in the back of my mind in terms of that, you know what, once you're in India, maybe a startup could be an option sometime. And that's where 2019, Sumit and Sujit, when they decided to do FI, I got a ping from Sumit because he was more a friend of mine. I'd known him from my time in the Bay Area, and never worked with any of them. And the way I like to frame it is, that team, I mean, you're talking about the rest of the folks in the founding team, right? Their record speaks for itself, if you ask me, where they have combined 50 plus years just at Google, and they're all Google veterans and very, very successful. And their last major project where they all worked together was Google Pay, where literally it was called Tez, and they were literally the key tech product business and finance leads that took it from practically zero to a wildly successful product out there, right? And then I like to put it half serious, half joking that I'm the diversity hire, in the sense that for Googlers, the world outside Google is unfamiliar, right? Okay. And they needed somebody who knew a little bit of what the world outside Google looked like. And once the request came in, that's one part of the view in terms of why I thought they would want somebody like me to join. But in terms of my decision making, it was very simple. It was just a case of people, right? More than the idea, as much as, like I said, right, their background speaks for itself. For me, it was just a case of deciding based on the people to say, you know what, if I am going to join with such a big responsibility on my shoulders and I have to do justice to it, then it's less to do with the specifics of what we are building and stuff, because we've all read enough about startups and pivots, right? There are so many examples out there of successful startups which started doing something else, and pivots are a thing, right? So for me, it was just a bet on the people, and here now it's I guess almost 6 years, whatnot, right? The battle and the journey continues, but I'm even more of a proponent, if you ask me, in terms of if someone would ask me, hey, how did you decide, or what would you suggest? I would literally repeat the same thing 100 times over, right? Where it's more a bet on the people as the first thing, and then the rest of it honestly follows.
Got it. Makes sense. So, like when we talk about there's in FI we have a card also.
Yes.
Like, but like as a consumer, if as a user, if I want to take FI card, what are the benefits which I will have apart from other cards? What are there in the market? Because they're like cards of Jupiter, they're cards of Scapia, Neo,
right.
All other fintech brands are selling cards now.
Yes.
And what will be the benefit for me as an individual when I take a card of FI?
Right. So we have both a zero Forex debit card, which is part of the FI Federal Savings Account that
Zero
you can
Forex debit
open.
Card, how does it work?
It's the same as most other products out there, in the sense that I think there, very honestly, the debit card is part of the larger story, because like I talked about, right, the FI savings account, big part of the FI savings account is not just what you get in terms of the savings account and the whatnot, right, but it's everything from your entire app experience, right from onboarding to the day-to-day payments and stuff. And I also, we discussed the MCP and the talk to AI, right? So that entire experience is where you would honestly see the differentiation and the value add become more and more apparent to you as you use it. And one of the many benefits that comes with the savings account is your zero Forex debit card, right? Where it's very simple. In fact, we've enhanced that feature over time, where we try to smartly identify that you're probably going on a trip or whatnot, right? And even the entire app experience, we call it travel mode, where the moment we realize you're outside the country, you would start seeing the balances and whatnot reflect the local currency in terms of whichever country you're in, right? And again, it's fairly seamless. We try and make sure we nudge you to turn on the international settings and stuff, right? Because again, we see a lot of cases where people have the card, but they try and make a transaction, but they've forgotten to turn on international transactions or enable it. And
then I will save that markup over there, right?
Yeah. So the main thing is markup, and it's seamless. The real benefit is savings on the markup. But the value add or the convenience factor, it really comes in terms of how seamless it is, right? Your entire end-to-end experience You don't really have to go through the hassle of trying to convert Forex while going on the trip and then come back and do the reverse conversion and all that, right? It's really, really seamless, and then whether it is the travel mode and the experience you get when you're outside India and doing the travel, and even the other, right, the insights analysis that we provide, even for you to even be able to post the trip, try and find out things around how much did I spend and all of that, right? That's where everything that we discuss around our journey with Ask5 and Talk to AI and all that, right? Those are intangibles where we've seen customers, our power users especially, validate the differentiation, because technically speaking, you could make a case that zero Forex is zero Forex. It's the intangibles and the value add we do beyond that is where the differentiation honestly kicks in.
But this is in terms of debit card, but in credit card?
Yes, our credit card offering is currently in CUG. We're all eagerly waiting for it to go live. There again, it's very similar.
Then too, what will be the benefits, like in terms of points, in terms of cashbacks? That is where people get attracted a lot.
Yes. I'll wait for the formal details to hopefully come out sooner or later. But I think we had our credit card product live and we had to pause it for some critical changes that we needed to make when the co-branding guidelines were updated by RBI, right? So there, our credit card is a weekend focused card, right?
Okay. That's what I want to do.
Yes, right. The Magnify, Amplify were the two cards we had, right? So that we are going to be relaunching it hopefully soon, and folks should be able to use it. There, again, this is based on a lot of extensive qualitative and quantitative research we have done, as well as our own learnings from when we had the card live, right? So that card, yes, people love cashbacks and without a doubt, and it's I think one unique USP there would be that this card is especially geared towards weekends and folks maximizing their cashbacks and returns during
movies,
weekends and their weekend spends.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, movies, restaurants, quick commerce and whatnot, right? So the team has worked really, really hard to drive the value proposition very high and help make it stand out from the rest of the offerings in the market, right? So yeah, hopefully maybe in as soon as a couple of weeks, we might have all the details public.
Great. By the time when we release this episode, the card might come.
Fingers crossed. That gets
Great.
done.
So now when we talk about the entire fintech landscape in India, 2019, 2021, lot of fintech companies.
Yes.
Like the bigger ones which we see now.
Yes.
Or someone who got disappeared.
Yes.
What was the challenges, like major challenge? Because challenge was not in terms of forming a team, because you guys were from experienced.
Right.
For you guys, challenge might not be raising money also, because people might have known you guys. I'll be very frank.
Sure.
But in terms of building the fintech brand in India as a company, regulations is always a challenge.
Yes.
Because be it anyone, they need to meet the guidelines, they need to follow the regulations. For you guys, what were the initial challenges what you guys faced in order 19, 20 and 21?
Got it. I would say initial, if I go back to the 2019-2020 time frame, very honestly, we underestimated how hard it is to even first build the product.
Correct.
Because we initially thought that it's going to take a handful of months to get the product out. So one wild card which everyone in the world was not prepared was basically COVID. So COVID happened when we were barely double digit, or lockdown happened when we were barely double digit, right? We had managed to do hiring and folks had not yet started when lockdown and COVID happened. So our first initial challenge was just figuring out how do you build the team and then how do you build the product, right? Because as much as remote and whatnot sounds nice and fancy and stuff, right? It's especially when you're a startup and when you're working with a bunch of people that you've never worked with before and trying to build something from scratch, the value of being in the same room, same place together and being able to collaborate closely is cannot be overstated, right? So for us, a big challenge was just figuring out how do you build the team, then build the product initially. Not to mention we, especially with the benefit of hindsight, we underestimated how hard it is, right? Because especially with all our tech background, right? It's easy to believe or think that the banks or the incumbents are, they just don't understand tech, hence their product reflects the weaknesses and whatnot, right? But in reality, if you're serious about regulations and stuff, and again, it comes down to making sure not even a single customer is negatively impacted for any reason whatsoever, right? So that does take a lot of time, energy, effort and attention to detail to get the tech right, right? And not to mention the entire the digitization of everything, right from onboarding, KYC and stuff. When you actually built it, we realized there were a lot of challenges which we honestly underestimated. So for example, if we talk about fraud and validation, right, or entire the KYC, right, we had to do some fairly really good innovation, for example. Right? Now it's standard, but the entire liveness piece.
Now,
right?
now video KYC is important.
Video KYC is important, but again, video KYC is still, if you ask me, strictly speaking, is still a step that adds friction. So in the onboarding, for example, we had to innovate on what's now industry standard. It's called liveness, right? Where how do you really make sure that the person for whom the account is being opened is real, is alive, and he's the individual that's opening the account, right? Because we would see all sorts of crazy attempts at fraud, such as somebody would hold the picture on their phone or even a printed photo of someone else and try to open their account on their behalf and stuff, right? So something like that, when you're before you got into the weeds of it, it's easy for you to think, oh, how difficult is it? It should be so easy to digitize the entire end-to-end process, right? But you have to solve for this, and you have to solve for this at scale and also at a high accuracy. So this is just one example of many things we had to innovate on.
Did you guys come across any alternatives to this video KYC now?
Unfortunately, no, because if anything, right, with the rise of GenAI and whatnot, right, if anything, we're actually investing in further ramping up the ability to detect deepfakes and all that, right? So yes, as much as the consumer part of me wants a really, really seamless, no, don't make me do video KYC and all that process, the big learning has been that some of the stuff that we don't really enjoy when it comes to regulation, right? Things that seemingly add friction or slow you down, they actually matter, and they do play an important role in safeguarding the customers, preventing fraud, reducing fraud and stuff, right? So that's been the challenge. So again, yes, you could argue or you could make a case that video KYC should go away, but then again, there are deep fakes and
that's not possible.
all that. So it remains a cat and mouse game. As technology improves, as humans, what we end up doing is technology is in and of itself neutral, but we humans tend to use it in all sorts of ways, right? And that's where you will find legitimate, valid use cases, and you will also find people trying to use tech for less than noble means and whatnot as well, right? So it remains a challenge. I can't tell you that I at least see a line of sight where we can completely eliminate video KYC yet.
No, video KYC I think is simpler also.
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting things. So now let's go to fintech landscape. Like when we see people building today as of now, like what is the major drawback you see, like where the people get stuck? Because people building from, it doesn't take a month or a year or so, it is a regular practice and regular efforts of building a fintech in India. So what is the thing which you see that young founders who are building today in India, in the market, where they get stuck mostly?
I would first maybe share a couple of thoughts around startups in general before we talk about specifically fintechs as a domain, right? Startups are always hard. Statistically speaking, if you're doing a startup, the odds are against you. You're not supposed to succeed, right? And the reality is, we are all, especially in the age of social media and everything, right? The outliers get highlighted a lot, right? We only read, hear about the Googles and Metas, or even other relatable examples of more recent time frame and whatnot, right? What is rarely talked about is, for every one that came out to be really, really successful, the hundreds, if not thousands, that attempted and didn't quite make it. That's one. And the other equally important thing is, for even these that became hugely successful, right? The journey, how much time did it take, as well as all the trials and the tribulations they went through and whatnot. And in many instances, right, I don't think we as a general public probably even know the real challenges that these big brands, businesses, which we later know of, had to go through, right? And I would bet a bunch of them had to face major challenges, near-death experiences, days, if not, close to days away from running out of money or whatnot, right? Those details are just not known. So the big mistake, if at all one could make as a founder, is to think it's easy, and or to think think in terms of just a few years time frame, right? So that's one big weakness, if anything, because it's a long, hard slog. It's a marathon, not a sprint, or it's a marathon composed of many sprints, to quote a cliche, right? I think that would be the big thing, right? This is true for all startups. Now, specifically fintech, if you ask me, fintech is and always and will always be a regulated industry, right? So that just adds a totally new dimension in terms of jeopardy and challenges if you talk about building a fintech startup, right? And as with anything else, when things are rosy and everything looks bullish and nice, you are going to attract more people come in. But especially in fintech, what people might underestimate or probably have done, if you ask me, is the fact that you cannot take regulation for granted, right? In the sense, at least for us, if I can talk about what we've the approach we have taken, we've always been very, very strict on ourselves and understood the pros and cons and the reason why regulation is necessary and it exists, right? And yes, when sometimes regulations and the regulatory changes seemingly don't work in your favor, it's easy to become negative and whatnot. But if you try and zoom out and look at the bigger picture, there is always some logic and truth behind it, right? I mean, maybe we can talk about to a different domain, real money gaming, right? With what happened last week, it's unfortunate, right? But there are many things in the world where it's always a trade-off. It's just impossible to come up with a solution where you can potentially please all parties, right? And then the real money gaming thing which happened just in the last week is yet another example.
In this only, what's your take? Like, if any, again, real money gaming is regulated, fintech is regulated, but banning the completely entirely industry, is it fair or not for a
very honestly, the only thing I'll say is I'm happy I'm not in the shoes of the regulator having to make the decision, right? So my real learning has literally been that as much as I also started at a point of view, especially if it was not something favorable to the fintech ecosystem or any startup or us, right? The initial reaction, which is very normal and very human, is to say this is wrong or why are you doing this, doesn't make sense. But I've come to realize the challenge in the decision making there, because your policies apply at the entire population level. Like if you're the regulator, you're making policies that are going to apply to the most populous country in the world when it comes to India, 1.4 whatever billion people, right? So at that point, it's like I'll flip it in the sense, am I able to come up with a regulation or a way where everybody, all parties are happy and delighted with the outcome, right? I mean, if you try and look at it from that perspective, right, you realize it's just not possible, right? And like I said, right, I can share my opinion, but rather I would play it a little safe to say, you know what, I'm happy I'm not having to make these decisions, and it's just the realization that for the greater good, sometimes you have to sacrifice a few, and it always sucks and it hurts to be in the cohort that's having to take the impact. But that's been the story of humanity, if you ask me, right? We've always, through evolution and whatnot, right? It's always a case of chosen few or co-opted few have to sacrifice for the greater good. So it's hard, and I have empathy and understanding for what folks that are impacted by regulation have to go through. But I also understand the other side in terms of why these tough decisions are having to be made.
Exactly. But for you also, do you ever feel that certain regulations rolled out by RBI suddenly, which were, you guys were already there in some particular kind of feature, but with that regulation it gonna change? You might be gone into like that, why this is happening, etc. All this pain.
Yeah.
Did you ever felt?
I can talk about, let's see, from day one through now, right? I can tell you our view going in was always to be really strict on ourselves with regulation, in the sense that our working principle is that if we do our best in terms of building the most secure and most compliant product and business out there, then any audit, compliance, whatever requirements when you have to go through should be a breeze, right? Now, it's one thing to have that as a guiding principle when you're building things, but in the nitty-gritty, the implementation is still a challenge, because inevitably, right, the choices you have to make, the decisions you have to make will slow you down. And there is always the temptation to say, you know what, you're a startup, move fast and break things. If you're a startup, jugad is okay, right? It's easy to, and you also know anecdotes and examples in terms of what happens in the industry, right? So the temptation is always there. I would say luckily we as a group and the larger team, we have managed to resist the temptation. We've somehow find a way to keep ourselves honest and stay on track, right? And it's definitely challenging, but our belief remains that if you keep doing the right thing, maybe you may not see the results in the short term, but in the long term you will definitely benefit, right? And that's where I talked about the temptation, right? We have seen the action. Like for example, say in the first 2019 through 2022, in general, the fintech ecosystem was on a tear and going crazy with a lot of companies, a lot of startups funding this and that, right? And the regulatory action started a little later, right? So, but you could see that the regulator is out there doing their job to their best, and they treat everyone the same, right? Whether you're a small startup or whether you're a really big established entity, then when you see that, you know what, the rules and the policies apply the same to everyone and they don't differentiate,
that is there.
that in a way validates. Like I said, I'm talking about it from our standpoint of, hey, why are we trying to be too strict or trying to do the right thing? You see the validation, right? The simple analogy I'll give you is, say late in the night, you're at a signal where there is no traffic police and you see a bunch of people jumping the red light. It is always a temptation to do the same.
Exactly.
But even there is another form of temptation. Maybe there are 5 people jumping the signal and there is a policeman further down the road who may still catch 2. So it's normal to question that, hey, why should I not jump the light when so many people are doing it? The other thing is, why did you catch only 2 if you happen to be one of the 2 that got caught? It's always hard. But the question is again, what do you want to be? So that's where we rely on, so like I said, right, from day one we have said, for good or bad, these are the guiding principles and the values we'll follow. And it comes down to just reinforcing the notion that if you keep doing the right thing, don't look at short-term outcomes, and believe that in the long run, you will earn, I mean, quote unquote, the karma and good luck down the line, right? So that's how we try and look at it. But yes, when in the here and now, when regulatory action happens and it's not necessarily favorable or to the ecosystem and you're also impacted, it's easy to feel negative and bad, and you just have to take the hit and move on, right? Because same, we discussed credit card and whatnot, right? So for us also, we had to pause it because of the co-branding guidelines being revised, and yeah, you have to take your punches and continue to fight the battle. That's how we try and do it.
But it's been so many years for you also. Like I think 15 years you must be working around. 15 years now.
20 plus, yeah.
22 decades. What's the major challenge in 2024-25 in managing teams? Because now the younger people have come, which we call Gen Z.
Right.
Techies, which we used to call were nerds before. They just put tech. Now they are not that nerdy now.
Right.
So in terms of that, what challenge do you face in dealing with someone who is just, suppose, graduated from a college, BTech degree, 23 years old, working style, but amazing developer, for example. What differences, what do you feel and challenges do you face?
Right. I can share. I mean, the first caveat I would put out there is a lot of what I'm sharing is just from experience, and I say a lot of these as someone who's done all of these mistakes and has been lucky to have good folks guide me along the way and show me the right path, and also, like you said, right, doing more of the dealing with teams, building teams, people managing and stuff in the second half of my career and stuff, right? I think the big challenge that I see with folks is the newer generation is really smart. I mean, there is no limit to their skill and ability, but they lack view in terms of what does it really take to build a career, right? Because everyone is in a hurry. It's like same, right? Get rich overnight or become an expert overnight, right? So the big thing missing is people don't realize that yes, it's tech is hard because you always have to keep learning, and there is a certain amount of learning you have to sustain to even stay in place. So that challenge, honestly, the younger folks are able to cope up with, but it's the undue or unrealistic expectations and pressure they put on themselves, both in terms of what they feel they need to achieve and the time frame in which they want to achieve, right? So if anything, my main input or suggestion to folks would be, it's a long game, right? Even in a T20, like I'm a big sports fan, right? Bear with my sports example.
Big fan of
cricket. So let me ask you this, right? Like your win predictor, if only the power play is done, just because you didn't do well in the power play, can you
India-Pakistan match, T20
or
World
28
Cup.
of 8, right? I was going to get to that. You preempted it in a way, right? But the point is, it's never over. Even in T20, there is so
Winning
many
percentage.
balls, so many options and whatnot out there, right? So I think what a lot of people miss is they don't play the long game. They don't realize that it's a long drawn out battle, and you have to stay in the game and build things over time. And there is no substitute for hard work and consistency, right? The skill is there, but at any level, any discipline, you have to combine skill with the effort and really the consistency, right? And give it time. Consistency is basically the time dimension, right? That is where I see a lot of the folks putting too much pressure on themselves to get to a really high level or sometimes even unrealistic level too soon. This is one. Obviously, the bubble and those things doesn't help, because again, people end up having unrealistic expectations. So those are the main challenges. Like I said, if I try to summarize, what I would put it is, people just need to realize that all good things take time. So they have to invest in themselves, put in the hard work, and if they can help it, don't look at the outcomes and don't measure yourself on the obvious metrics and stuff, but keep doing the hard work and focus on the input. The input is, what kind of work are you doing, what is the company you keep, what are you learning, how are you adding value. You keep doing that well enough and for long enough, the outcome will be there. It's the same as when it comes to investing, right? Do the boring thing, do SIPs and do the boring easy stuff, but do it for long enough. Yet everyone is looking for what is the next breakthrough stock, or how do I invest in one stock and become a millionaire, right? It's the answer is common for everything, right? Time and effort, or effort compounded over time, is how you achieve results. That's the big challenge I see with the younger generation. But in terms of the talent and the skill and the creativity, I think they're sorted. Very little I can teach them. If anything, a big part of what I enjoy in my work at FI as well is we are obviously a very young org and have a lot of young folks, right? A lot of my motivation and energy.
Average age of.
I don't know in terms of age, but a lot of our folks are in the say 1 to 4 odd years. That's the majority experience, right? So the energy and the creativity and even the way they operate and whatnot, right? I learn a lot every single day. So that's a large part of what keeps me going at work as well. But yeah, my input is play the long game, focus on the input, and do the hard work. There is no substitute for hard work.
Great. Cool then. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing such amazing insights, because a couple of things which I also wanted to understand about this fintech, because fintech landscape is in India is like always very different. People see it very like regulated, obviously that is there, but people get scared of.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks again for extending the invite, and yeah, hopefully it's useful for the viewers that are consuming this. Thanks.
With this, guys, thank you so much for watching this. Stay tuned for the next episode.